and then we kind of talked our way through what people were doing. What I want to give you guys is a more formal structure to apply to any kind of workout program that you're going to do, that you find someplace, that your roommate is going to do, right? This is the magic. I got 3 weeks until spring break. This is the magic workout plan that's gonna get us all shredded before we have to go to Daytona Beach or wherever you guys go if you go to the beach, okay? So there's something called the FIT principle. The FIT principle stands for frequency, intensity, time, and type, okay? So for every workout program, every time we're going to do something, we can look at these 4 elements and see, first of all, do these elements exist? Like, is it there? Is the program giving us instructions about all of these things, okay? And then whether they do or they don't, if they do give us something, we can then compare what they're suggesting for each one of these to kind of a more idealized recommendation, okay? So frequency is just what it says. How many days per week is Kylie going to go work out? Okay. So you're going to go 2 days per week, or 3 days per week, or 5 days per week, or something like that. Okay. That one's pretty easy to pick out. Okay. So time and type, we're going to leave intensity for the last one. We'll start with type. Type is just, what are you doing? Okay. For resistance training, type is a little bit more straightforward than it is for aerobic training, right? Your type is, I'm lifting weights, right? I'm doing free weights, I'm doing machines, I'm doing body weight, whatever that's going to be. And then what are the major muscle groups? I'm going to work out my, biceps. I'm going to work out my back muscles. I'm going to work out my low back. I'm lifting legs, whatever that's going to be. Okay? So, number of days per week, what is it precisely that we're doing? What are our target muscle groups? Okay. Time is our way of quantifying. With resistance training, it's not really, Evan went to the gym and spent 3 hours in there. It's not really like that. Evan, you ever spent 3 hours in the gym, like lifting weights or doing anything? That is a lot, right? As a person that has been in there close to that long, you spend a lot of your time with weights not actually doing a lot. It's like, hurry up and wait. I lifted and then I had to wait. And I lifted and then I got to wait, okay? That's not what time in this instance means. What we mean really is how many sets and reps, how much actual training are we going to do in a particular session, okay? So it's really going to be number of sets, number of reps per given activity. Right? I'm going to do 4 sets of 5 repetitions of squats. Okay. I'm going to do 3 sets of 12 repetitions of bicep curls. All right. That's what those do. Every program that we find should tell us something about this. If they don't, how the hell do you know what you're going to do? Right? The last piece, though. This is the one that's the most difficult to get an answer to, and this is the one that people mess up or don't put down the most often, and it's intensity. What we mean by intensity, okay, is how hard or easy was what you were doing, and we usually try to quantify that by the amount of resistance or the amount of weight that you're going to lift, okay? If we have a measure of intensity, okay, it must, to be truly accurate and give us the best results, it must be based off of a percentage of your 1 repetition maximum strength for that particular lift, okay? If someone says, well, just go and lift something that's kind of hard, I don't know what that means, right? That may be different for Amanda than it is for Casey. Okay? The way that we know we are going to do the best job of fitting, right, kind of the next stuff that we're going to talk about, of fitting progression and fitting overload and fitting specificity in, is to make sure that our intensity is going to prescribe or be prescribed based upon some percentage of your maximal strength. Okay? The ideal way to do that is with your 1 rep. Okay, so something very close to that. So we're doing the grip strength thing is making its way around somewhere. Who's got it?
I don't have it.
Okay, Hensley has it. Hensley, you don't have to tell us what your number is, but Hensley's about to squeeze. That's not a 1 rep max, it's an isometric strength, but she's going to get a number. And so we could say if she was going to go do grip strength activities today, we're going to give her 3 sets of 10 repetitions where she's got to try to squeeze at 70% or 80% of whatever her maximal strength is. Okay. Does that make sense? This is the place where most people mess up. Okay. And I say mess up, but this is the place that most programs lack. Okay. That most programs lack. So anybody already lift weights today? Anybody? Kyle, you did? Yeah. Were you basing how much you lifted on some kind of percentage of your maximal strength or something that was close? Or did you just go in there and like, yeah, I'm just going to do a little bit of this today?
For some of it, yeah.
For some, okay. So the problem that we run into, right, is it's hard to be able to measure our 1 rep max, as some of you guys may see all by yourself, okay? But we need to do this so that we can make sure that we're doing this correctly, okay? All right, that's what we're going to do. So think about the last time you did you lifted weights. Think about the last time somebody you know did, and were you basing your intensity on all of that? This is the place where people sort of mess up the most often. Okay. All right. The other thing that we're going to use when we evaluate a program is the ideas that are called progression, regularity, overload, and specificity, or PROS. Okay. You can write out these things, and then you can tell us, is there progression in what it is that you're doing? Is there regularity or repetition in what you're doing? Is there overload? Is there specificity? Okay. So I'm going to take the easier ones of these two first, and then we'll talk about the other two. So regularity very simply means, are you going on a regular basis for your program? Does this program have you doing something, let's just say at least once a week, probably twice a week, okay? And then it needs to be, it can't be a program for it to have regularity. You can't say I'm going to squat in week 1 day a week, and then I'm not going to squat again until week 7 of my program. That's not regularity. Regularity is I'm going to squat on Monday this week, I'm going to squat on Monday next week, so on and so forth. The biggest thing that helps to drive adaptations to training, that drives an increase in strength, that drives an increase in muscle size, is going regularly. You need to do things often, okay, and consistently. That's the idea of regularity. Specificity tells us that you're going to get better at doing whatever it is that you're trying to do. Okay? So when you look at a program, it should have a stated goal. If my stated goal is to get better at doing squats, I need to do squats. It's to get better at doing power cleans. I need to power clean, right? So we need a goal on the end of all of these things. And that's where the specificity is going to come. So you want to make sure, what's the goal? Does the training program actually match up where you're training in a way that would help you to achieve that goal? Okay? Does that make sense? Most programs that you find are going to be pretty reasonable on this. Most of them are going to have a reasonable amount of regularity. They're going to have a reasonable amount of specificity on those things. A lot of them will say, they're like, oh, this is just to get stronger in all sort of body parts, or kind of a total body workout or something. And the way you analyze that, then it's just, okay, but are they doing some arms, some legs, some back? Are they doing a little bit of everything in there? That would be our specificity there. The other two are probably the most important, assuming you're going to go at least once a week or a couple of times per week, and assuming that you're going to do the things that match up with what your goals are. Then progression and overload are the things that are really going to drive, really it's overload is the things going to drive all of our adaptations. Okay? Sophie, if I say progression to you, what comes to mind? What do you think of?
Say like increase.
Okay. Like in a very general sense.
Like improvement.
Okay. Have you progressed in your academic career as you've moved along here? Okay. What does that mean to you? So you're just talking about increase or something like all of that. Do you think that applies kind of in that way?
Yeah.
Are you a better, have your study skills progressed over time? Are you better at doing it, right? Okay. So that's kind of the general idea with this. Okay. If I'm doing something now, I may need to change it as I get better at doing something, right? As this happens, I'm going to progress. I learn some new skills. I need to progress. I'm going to keep moving, and I'm trying to push things forward. Normally, we link the idea of progression and overload together, and we say that if you really want to maximize your increase in strength and increase in muscle size, you need what we call progressive overload, right? Progressive overload. So we overload very simply by having you do more than whatever you normally do. Okay? In a hilariously sad dad story from yesterday, we took Ellis to the zoo. We got to see a 1-month-old or like a 3-week-old baby elephant, who was like the most adorable thing you've ever seen. But Ellis weighs about 40 pounds, and I had to carry her around at the zoo some. We had to push her around in her stroller. Which is not that bad, but there were some hills. And I'm sore today from walking around at the zoo, right? Like I am old and sad because that was an overload for me, right? I'm not used to pushing a stroller with a 40-pound toddler, plus probably another 30 pounds of snacks and purses and coats and diapers and everything else we put in there. I'm not used to doing that. That's more than I regularly do. Doesn't take a lot to do more than what I regularly do now, but that's overload. Okay. And so I'll go back, Kyle, if you don't mind me asking. Kyle, did you overload with what you lifted today? Did you lift more, either more weight, more reps, or another set, or a different exercise in comparison to what maybe you had done last week or the week before? Okay, that's good. That's progressive overload. Go do something today. All right, I'm going to do 2 sets of 10 repetitions with 70% of my 1 rep max at that exercise. Okay, I do that. That is or is not challenging. Okay, but then I'm going to come back on Thursday this week and I'm going to do 3 sets of 10 with that. That could be overload. Or 4 sets of 10. That could be overload. I'm going to do 3 sets of 10, but I'm going to add 5 pounds. Right. So we have to do more than what we're normally accustomed to do, and that's how we get overload. Right? The reason that intensity and quantifying intensity as a percentage of 1 rep max is so important is that if you don't know your maximal strength, and you don't know how your maximal strength changes over time, what we tend to do is not lift enough weight or not lift enough weight enough times. So we undershoot on our overload. We undershoot on overload. And when that happens, then you don't get any adaptation. You don't get better. Okay? You don't get better. My father, the retired football coach, was very fond of saying, you're either going to get better today or you're going to get worse today. Have you done something to get better? Amanda, have you bettered yourself today in some way, shape, or form, right? And so it's kind of this idea. I'm going to go to the weight room and I'm going to bother to go in there. I'm either going to get my progression and my overload and my intensity and things right, and I will hopefully drive adaptations to get better, or I'm not, and I'm at least going to stay the same, or I may get worse. That's kind of the idea behind all of this. If you're going to bother to go, let's do whatever we can to make it effective. Okay? What lots of programs will do is they may get the intensity correct initially, but then they lack progression. You've been doing the same thing for a month, and you've never increased weight, or you've never added a set or something like all of that. And so at some point, you have adapted, and what used to be an overload is no longer an overload, so there's no progression, and you're not going to get any further increases. Okay? The way that we try to ensure progression and overload is by reassessing 1 rep max. Okay. I do the 1 rep max to start with. I know how strong I am today. I base my intensity on that so I can get overload. I train in that particular way for about a month, and then I want to do it again. I need to reassess my 1 rep max. Let's see how much stronger I've gotten so that I can make sure then that I can get my intensity correct to keep overload. Does that make sense? Yes, sir.
So should we know our 1 rep max for every workout?
Like
how you're saying,
like for every lift, basically?
Yeah.
Yes. I would argue that you should, yes. That would be the ideal way to do things, right? And maybe you assess it like with a multiple rep max, and then you can use there's some charts where you can turn the multiple rep max into a 1 rep max. But I would say that, yes, right? You should test on everything to start with, know where you are, and then, figure it out from there. Now, what tends to happen, everybody, is that if you're a person that has resistance trained and you have some experience, then you kind of have a feel for what those things are going to be. And all right, well, I can do this much weight probably about 10 times. And so, right, we may not know precisely what your 1 rep max is, but that's enough weight that, I can do it 10, I probably can't do it 11, so I'm gonna do that today. And then I'm gonna come back in a week and I'm gonna do it again. And if I can get 11 or 12 reps, then it's time for me to go up. So you can, ideally, yes, you test everything, but some people you can kind of fudge a little bit if you have a pretty good sense of where you should be. If that makes sense. Okay. Okay. I will move on when someone else asks me a question. So my wife sent this to me last week. I thought it was a particularly brilliant piece of suggested teaching pedagogy, that when I ask you all if you have questions and nobody says anything, that I should say, no, do it the other way. We will move on to the next topic in our next example once somebody asks me a question. So, okay. Carol, I saw you first, and then we'll go to Miles.
Well, I guess it's not about this. On the critique thing.
Yes.
In the instructions, it says to print out the program and turn it into critique, but then it says to turn it in like on Friday. So do you just want it all on like a document and sent to you, or do you still want it print?
Okay. I want you guys to put it, and you can put a link, okay, if you need to, like paste the hyperlink to the program in there in your Word document and then submit it that way. If you can, if you want to, and you want to go to the thing and it has an easy table or a PDF that you can just copy and paste and merge together and put in your thing, that's great. But otherwise, just put the link in there, and that will be fine. Since we're not going to turn it in class, you don't have to print it all in that way. Madison?
I was just gonna have you remind me how I would find my 1 rep max. Like, say I went and did it right.
Okay, good question. How would you find your 1 rep max? Okay, so what we would do is, let's just say we're going to have you do squats, Madison. Okay, we would have you come in, and despite my thoughts on things, all the procedures say that you should do a warm up. We'll do bro science on Wednesday, and I'll tell you why I think warm ups are dumb, but that's fine. The warm up pleases you, do the warm up. Okay. Do some body weight squats, work through some ranges of motion, do some stretching, whatever. Then we're going to say, okay, Madison, how much weight do you think you could squat? Do you have any idea? You ever done squats? Do you have any idea? No clue. Okay.
Probably like the bar.
Okay. So if you think I can squat the bar, we would say, okay, here's the bar. Let's do a squat with the bar. Okay. And what we would look for is, we've shown you what the full range of motion. Here's how you should be doing this exercise. Try it. Okay, let's say you could lift with the bar. We then would ask you, all right, well, how hard is that? Like from a 0 to a 10, like 10 being that was as hard as I could possibly sort of exert myself to still manage it. Like, where were you? And you're like, okay, that was like a 3. Okay. So then I would say, okay, well, then we're going to put some greater portion of weight. If it's really easy on a thing like a squat, we might add 50 or 75 pounds or something like that. We're going to give you 100 pounds now. Do that. We watch you, you tell us how difficult it is, and then we kind of progressively add weight. And a lot of that is art rather than science. As you practice or you watch other people do things, like I could probably watch you, because we do this a lot in the lab when we've done things, to be like, no, like you need to add 10 more pounds, no, you need to add 50 more pounds. You can just kind of get a feel for how difficult it looks despite what people will tell you. And so you do that and you're like, okay, I got 100. Or now we're going to give you 150. You're like, I got 150, but it was really hard. So I'm going to say, okay, now we're going to give you 160. And then you can't do, the idea is you lift until you cannot lift that weight. Okay. You got 150. We gave you 160. You couldn't do 160. So then we dial it backwards and we give you 155. Right. So we kind of jump forwards and backwards based upon those things until we can hone in. The key thing when doing 1 rep maxes is rest. Okay. Is rest. You do the lift, we need to wait like at least 3 minutes or 4 minutes in between attempts to make sure that there's not metabolic fatigue that may cause you to not be able to lift as much as possible. Okay? That's how we would go about doing that. It's just kind of this stair step. Okay, I got that. It was pretty easy. Guess it some more, and then kind of dial it back down. For people that more commonly are already doing something, we could ask them, well, what did you do in your last workouts, right? We could ask Kyle what he did this morning. You know, if you were doing sets of 8, how much weight were you lifting for that set of 8? We can get a projection from all of that and be like, how we're going to give you that for your 1 rep max, and start there and see what happens. Okay, so that's how we do all of that. That's a good question. That's a good question. I'm pretty sure that in the video, there's a video of how we do that on Canvas, in that I put a link to some videos. I'm pretty sure that there's a 1 rep max video in there, but good question, guys. All right. Anybody have questions about progression, about overload, about regularity, or about specificity? Yes, Ed.
How often would you progress? Would you like is increasing weight once every week?
Okay, a super question. Different people will give you different answers. The science is a little murky, I would say, on all of that. What I would tell you is, so maybe I should do this. So there are, I'll just write on this side. Some very general guidelines, guys. Some very general guidelines, okay? If we know, I'm going to get this ties back to your question. If we know your 1 rep max, okay, you should be able to lift, okay, about 75% of your 1 rep max for approximately 10 reps, okay, 70 to 75%. 80% for about 8 reps, okay. 85% for about 6, right? 90%, probably 3 to 4, depending upon what it is, so on and so forth. Okay? So let's say my prescription tells me I know my 1 rep max. I need to do 2 sets of 10 reps, and I'm going to use 75% of my 1 rep max. Okay? You do the first set, you get your 10 reps, you rest. Then you do your second set, and I get 10 reps, and I try to do an 11. You should always, when you get to your number, you should always try to keep going, right? I got 10, I tried 11, I couldn't get 11. When I come back the next time, I don't need to change what I'm doing because I hit my target, but I couldn't go far, okay? A good general rule of thumb is that when you can do 2 more repetitions than what you are shooting for, then you've increased your strength enough that the weight you're lifting is no longer actually 75% of your 1 rep max. Maybe it's more like 7. So then you want to go ahead and progress forward either by adding another set or probably by adding, depending upon whatever it is, adding 5% of weight or something. Add 2.5 pounds, add 5 pounds, whatever you're kind of, depending upon what the lift is. And so that may, early on in a program, that may happen every week, right? But then it may only happen every month or something, as you become a little bit more advanced with things. And so that's where there's, again, some gray area and a little bit of art in the mix. So what happens is, once you know you can do more, then you can be more sure that you've actually gotten stronger. And then we need to go ahead and turn it up. And you can do that without having to reassess your one rep max. Okay? That's a good question. Any other ones? No? Okay. So progression, regularity, we talked about this. So I do want to again emphasize the idea on overload, that to me, the easiest way to continue with overload is to add weight. Okay. Whatever you've been doing, add 5 pounds. Okay. Whatever you've been doing, add 5 more, add 10 more. But you can overload by increasing the number of repetitions you're doing with a certain weight. You can overload by increasing the number of sets. If you've been doing 1 set, do 2 sets. If you've been doing 2 sets, do 3. Right? You can theoretically overload by, if you've been doing that same exercise and muscle group 2 times per week, do it 3. Okay? You can also decrease the rest interval between sets if you want to. Okay? So there are some other ways to manipulate this. And a lot of times this area here is the place where we get a lot of interest and argument over what should you do. Okay, what should you do? And there's some evidence that doing one thing may work better for maximizing strength and something else may work a little bit better for maximizing muscle size. What I would say for most people though is just make sure you're doing something like that. Right? When it becomes easier, make it harder again. That's the most simple thing. Okay? All right. So we did specificity, safety issues. Okay. Now, the last thing that I'm going to talk to you guys about is something called periodization. Now, if you seem intrigued by what this is, I would encourage you to take the advanced resistance training elective class that we have, because that's what the entire class is about, is the idea of periodization. Okay? So periodization is change. It's variation in whatever it is that we're doing. And as that relates to resistance training or aerobic training or training for a particular sports skill, what it comes down to is this thought out, okay, big picture, longer term way of manipulating and changing how we are training over time in an effort to maximize our gains in strength, our gains in muscle size, our gains in sport specific skills, so that I can perform at my best during some particular competition. So typically we break periods of training into these things called macrocycles, mesocycles, and microcycles. Okay? Normally a macrocycle can be like a year. Okay. So you are, let's just say, a college athlete. Okay. Trying to think what, so let's say you're a college soccer player. They don't play soccer in the spring, maybe they do something, but usually soccer is a fall sport. So we're going to take from the end of one season and have a macro training cycle all the way from the end of one season to the beginning of the next, to the sort of from the end of one season to the end of the next season. Okay? And you're going to set out like, here's my goals across this whole year. And I need to try to get to all of this. So I want to do this with resistance training, this with running, this with biking, this with my sports specific skills. And you take that year-long period and you break it up into what we call the mesocycle. Okay? So a mesocycle might last a couple of months. Okay? And you say, well, in this mesocycle, in the first off-season mesocycle for a soccer player, we're going to try to lift as much weight as we can to make ourselves get as big of muscles and as strong of muscles as we possibly can. We're not going to kick a soccer ball. We're not going to run. We're not going to do anything. And we're going to move from that mesocycle to the next mesocycle to the next, and you layer these things on top of each other. You have these unique goals for each, say, mesocycle, which then will fit together to help us reach our goal for our macrocycle. A microcycle is going to take the mesocycle and break it up into smaller units. So a microcycle might be a week. All right, my mesocycle lasts 8 weeks. I've got 8 1-week microcycles. So it would say in week 1, I'm going to do this, and week 2, I'm going to do this, and week 3, and so on and so forth. There are few things in the world of strength and conditioning that people fight over more than the proper way to do this. Right? Than the proper way to do this. It's beyond the scope of this class for me to talk about all of the ways that people try to change these things, right? But there's a thing called linear periodization where it goes up. You just work harder and harder over time. There's an idea called reverse linear periodization when you work really hard at the start and then you taper off over time. There's linear periodization overall with the stuff that is called like a microcycle that's called undulating. And so within a given week, it's going to say, I'm going to do this week is low, next week is high, the next week is moderate, and it progressively gets higher over time, but I kind of switch it up from week to week. God, people bend themselves into a pretzel about this stuff to no end, okay? To no end. It's next to impossible for us to do good, well-controlled research studies on all of this. What we know is that periodized training seems to be better than non-periodized training, okay? Having a plan, changing these things around matters, and it's better than having no plan. Which one of these things is actually the perfect, best way to do things is a giant mess. Some studies say one thing, some studies say some other things. But again, I would just tell you guys that having a plan is a good idea, okay? And if you're interested in this, take the advanced resistance training class because that's what the whole class is about. It's about how to come up with all of these kinds of things and how to integrate what you're doing with resistance training simultaneously with aerobic training, simultaneous to sport-specific training. There is some planning and science that goes into all of that. Okay? That's the idea of periodization. Okay? Somebody asked me a question about periodization. Okay.
What do you think is the best?
So so I think there's probably 2 basic principles that we need to follow to me. Okay. One is if you are dealing with athletes who have a particular competition, let's just say, right? So, and this is especially true for people that have, like, I run track or I'm an Olympic athlete where you're going to have like 1 or 2 competitions where you need to be at your absolute best on those days, and everything builds to that, which is a little bit different than like I'm a basketball player where the games at the start of the season matter just as much in some ways as the games at the end of the season. Or a football player, like the ones at the end may mean something, but if I can't win and be at my best at the start, we're not going to get there. There's a little bit of difference there. But what you need to try to do is understand, one, that it takes time, which we can quantify, for certain adaptations to be able to kick in. We know there's a time course for how long it takes for you to get stronger and for your muscles to get bigger and to develop particular sports skills and those kinds of things. And to understand that it's hard. I can't train everything all at the same time and maximize my gains. I can't lift really hard and run a huge amount and, practice golf 8 hours a day. There's going to be interference in those kinds of things. And so what you probably to me want to do is you want to take a period of time where you're going to focus more on resistance training and just make sure you're overloading in the midst of all of that. And then you want to take a time where I'm going to slack the resistance training a little bit and focus on aerobic training if that matters. Okay. And then I got to have a time where I'm going to try to focus more on my sports skills And you're gonna have to try to time those things so that the adaptations you get match up with when you need to compete in some ways. What you want to spend off season more time on aerobic and resistance, less time on sport specific skills. Immediate preseason and during the season, more so on sport specific things, and then more focused on just maintaining whatever else you've kind of gathered in that particular, or in that way. So to do that, to me, if you have a good progression system and you are progressively overloading, you are doing periodization just by doing that, right? By every time you progress, you've changed what you're doing. And so you're actually building some of this in that particular way. And I would just say, like, in general, like, do something for a month, make it hard every time you go in there, or mostly hard when you go in there. Do a month where you're doing 3 sets of 10 reps, and then have a month where you're doing 4 sets of 5 reps, change it up a little bit, like all of that. Make sure you're overloading within those things. And that's probably relatively sufficient for, for most kinds of things. It gets tricky for athletes, kid, because they need to do power exercises and stuff that, and like training for sprints and agility, and it's hard to be good at those while also lifting heavy on the same days or close to the same days. So it gets a little tricky.
Okay, so for like track events and stuff, you said, so you think that should be linear? Because you're trying to like build up to.
So it needs to be linear, and then you need to taper. I think the linear is fine, but then you've got to taper some of the intensity, because we know, especially for aerobic events, that you've got to taper in order to be able to do some things. So, whether you should do sort of undulating linear progression or reverse undulating, reverse linear progression, all of it is, if you do all of it in a reasonable manner, you're going to get within 2 or 3% of the same results, no matter what it is that you're doing. So that's kind of a cop-out answer. I'm sorry, but it's not really I think we overcomplicate things way too much. It's much more important to actually go and work hard when you're there and just do something a few times a week for most people. But that's hard to convince people that you need a job to do that, right? Like, no, my way is better. This way, this thing, we're going to put the chains on the bench press and do all of this. And we're going to have TheraBand hopping. And I'm like, just, I'm going to lift some weights, man. Go lift some, be heavy. Okay. All right. There's the critique kind of a thing. So what I'm going to do now is you guys we're going to try a critique in class. Okay. I'm going to try a critique in class. So let me see if I can pull this up, if this is actually going to work. Nope, it does not seem to be working. I'm going to stop my share. Here we go. Okay. All right, can you guys see this reasonably okay? So you should be able to curl almost back to like where your middle finger can almost touch the tip of your thumb, Kenzie. So kind of seat it down a little farther in. You probably need to shorten it just a little bit. Down so that it comes, your hand gets a little more kind of closed off. What I want you to do is to get a partner, okay? And on a piece of paper with both of your names on it, here is a beginner workout. We've got squats, chest press on a machine, rows, shoulder press, right? Crunches, lower back, bodybuilding machine. Of the earth, know what that one is. On these kinds of things, you've got some reps and things that are going to be there. So I want you to go through, and I want you to look at this and say fit, frequency, intensity, time, type, and identify what needs to go in those categories for this one. This is what you're going to do as part of your critique. Okay. So I'm going to find a partner, and I'm going to give you guys about 5 minutes to do this. Okay, about 5 minutes.
This. I do.
About one more minute, yes.
What all do we need to answer?
I just want you to fill out frequency, intensity, time, type. And it's possible that those things may not exist based upon what you see. Okay? Yes, we can. Okay, a little bit louder, please. The whole thing. Doesn't have to be each one individually. All right, y'all gonna have like one more minute. We'll call it done. My wife is imploring me to watch a video of our daughter at daycare. She had to wear her Cinderella, no, it's not Cinderella, Snow White dress today. Yes. 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 She refused to wear anything else, guys. And at some points in the morning, you're just like, you know what, I'm not fighting this. I don't really care. Yes, you can dress up like Snow White. Okay. Who thinks they've got this? Which group thinks you're right? Okay, you think you got it?
Yeah.
And did you work with anybody else or just all by yourself? You and Megan did? Okay. I didn't see y'all chatting very much. I just didn't know. Y'all left poor Sophie out hanging out by herself? Okay, you joined them. Okay. You need to be inclusive, everybody. If we have an odd number. All right. Ken, what did y'all get for frequency?
They're kind of just, isn't it? Besides the 15 reps for each exercise.
Okay. I'm going to put a question mark. How would we answer that? Would anybody else put that? We don't know what the frequency is? Okay, I'm seeing nods of heads. How would we find frequency? Casey?
It would have said like the days per week that you're doing this particular
Okay.
set of exercises.
Yes. Yes. Okay. And so my guess is if we keep scrolling down on all of this, there may be some additional instructions or something. But we at least need to be aware, right? How many days per week are we doing this or not doing this? You would be surprised, and I picked this in some ways for a reason. You'd be surprised how little information some workout plans actually give you. They may not specify that. Right? You think, well, this is super obvious. I need to go like this number of days per week or something. It just doesn't say. Okay. Pick someone else. Who thinks what pair thinks you've got the intensity part? Hensley. It didn't give an intensity. Okay. Are they trying to tell us something about intensity somewhere, Hensley? I agree with you. It's not listed. If it was to be done the best way, what would they have given us?
Like how much weight?
Okay. They would have given us a weight. Okay.
Because it says beginner at the top, if that
That's
doesn't
right.
really mean.
But if they'd said 100 pounds, let's just say. So it says squats with no weights. What's the intensity of that? No idea, right? But it says flat chest press machine. If it had said use 100 pounds, would that be an okay thing for them to tell us? Lots of y'all are shaking your heads. No, Madison, why not?
Well, because it's supposed to be based on like the percentage of everyone right now.
Exactly. So giving us some weight is better than none. Okay, but we really need some percentage of 1 RM or percentage of maximum. So Hensley, y'all were absolutely right. It's not there. Okay, it's not there. Now, and this is the thing that comes up sometimes. So it says squats with no weights, body weight squats. How do we determine intensity on body weight exercise? How do you do prescription? Because I can assure you that if you do enough body weight squats, or if you're weak enough like me and you weigh enough like me, that doing some body weight squats can be relatively intense. I can get overload by doing that. You can do enough push-ups to get overload. It can be done. But how do we try to quantify and get some more objective way of what it is that I should be doing? How would we go about that? Because I don't want you guys to think that doing bodyweight exercise is bad. It's not, okay? But our prescription is a little trickier by doing it. So how do we do that? What do you guys think? Fine?
You asking how to prescribe the
Yeah.
body weight?
Can you lift the percentage of your body weight? Usually I can tell you, I want you to do push-ups, Henley, with 75% of your body weight.
Oh, but you meant like we could take.
Oh, yes, that's right. So I can say like, hey, do a squat with some percentage of your body weight. Yes, you could do that. I mean, like, I've got to do a body weight squat. Can I somehow like cut my body weight in half and like only do a squat with half my weight? Unless you're going to hook me up to a harness, right, to like do some assisting things, we can't really do that. So how do we do it? Hey, what do you think?
Do like a percentage of how many, like the max number of reps you can do.
Okay.
Percent of the max number of reps.
So like I can do 100, right, body weight squats. So I need to do 70 of those or something. That would be a perfectly fine way to do all of that. Okay. Where it gets to be tricky is, what if I'm pretty strong and I can do a bunch of these? If I can do 100, I could probably do 100 body weight squats. I hope to do that like on Wednesday. If I just come in and all do body weight squats until you can't do it anymore. Right? Most of you will quit before you actually reach your physiological maximum. So we can do it that way. So it is hard, and most people, when they do body weight stuff, they don't, their ability to prescribe intensity is going to be a little bit lacking. Okay. But I don't want you guys to think that doing body weight exercise is bad, or that you can't increase muscle size or strength by doing all of those things. But for a lot of exercises, for a lot of people, it's a little trickier and it's more difficult because you have to do a lot of reps on certain things. Okay. So, but it can be perfectly useful and effective at things. And it's also for certain kinds of athletes or people that do certain kinds of things, doing body weight exercise, if that's what you do and you have to move your body weight in that way, can be really effective. Right? Like if you're a gymnast or you're in like Cirque du Soleil or something like that, or you've got to do something that involves you having to move your body weight a lot of times, and it can be a really effective thing. Okay. So not very good on frequency. Our intensity, not a lot. So what about time? What do we get for time?
Like the same number of reps for each.
Okay, the same number of reps. But what are the, like, how many sets are we doing? How many reps are we doing? That's what needs to go. So how many sets does it look like this is? One set, and then how many reps? All right, so one set, 15 reps. Is that a reasonable thing to do? You guys think? Do we have a critique of that? Is one set okay? Remember, I'm a beginner. Is one set okay? Kind of, sort of, maybe. There seems to be some debate. Y'all are unsure. Casey?
It depends if it's like one set per day or one set per week or one
Okay.
set per.
Okay. So I would argue, and I think that's a very good point. Casey's right. There's a little bit of nuance. In a beginner workout, doing one set, at least to start with, like I'm going to do one set of, right, chest press machine. Now we don't know, if we keep going down, there may be a second set or a third set, and we have done more than that. But if we just want to show you guys, if there is one set, if you did one set a couple of times a week for the first couple of weeks, that's probably going to be fine, right? But at some point, we're going to need more to get our overall. You guys think that 10 to 15 reps is okay? How would we know if it was okay or not okay? I need my 1 rep max, that's right. I would, but I just mean in general is doing, even if, assuming we know our 1 rep max, we're using the right amount of weight, is doing 10 reps an okay thing to do? Yeah, probably okay. What about 15?
Yeah.
We're getting close though, right? If our goal is strength, if we do more than 15, we're probably getting more onto an endurance side of things, which is okay if that's what your goal is. But we're kind of right at the edge in the midst of those, okay? So remember, the ACSM recommendations, right? 2 to 3 days per week for most major muscle groups, right? We're going to do 2 to 4 sets, 8 to 12 reps, right? And we're going to hit, our type is going to be major, kind of big muscle groups, right? And then our intensity, because it's 8 to 12 reps, is probably going to be somewhere between 50 80%. So this is the actual, this is about as good as we can do. Then compare that to what we've got here. Type, right? We haven't really covered type, but there's some, that's pretty total body with all of this. We've got an arm exercise, a leg exercise. We're not too far off of this. So we're probably doing okay on type. We're reasonably okay on our time, but intensity and frequency would be real problems for this one. So how would we fix that? If your roommate brought you this thing and said, hey, I'm going to go do this, you're an HES major, you should know about this. Is it okay? Is this going to be good? Is this going to be bad? What should I change? What would we do? What would we change? Providing intensity, right? You need to know your 1 rep max. Okay. You need to know an intensity. Good. What else? Pretty simple, guys. A frequency. We need to know the number of days per week, and we need to know an intensity. Otherwise, the rest of it's not too bad. Okay. And this is how you guys are going to do your program critique. Okay. This is what you're going to do. This is your chance to ask me questions. Okay. This is the question asking time. This is what you're going to do. You're going to find your program. You're going to read about it. You're going to write out its goal. You're going to write out all the things that they're doing. You're going to compare that to kind of our ideal ACSM version of doing things. And you're going to have to write out specifically, what is the frequency? Does it meet what you're supposed to? What is the intensity? Does it meet whatever it's supposed to? 90% of y'all will find one that does not talk about intensity the right way. That's the major problem that we have. Most of them, the rest of the stuff is fine. We're like, oh, like just grab some weight and do it. I'm like, well, that doesn't help me. Right? I have no clue on how to do that. Madison.
So, our own, like, so for the type, say it was this one, so you just say, to be specific, like, it does total body, like.
Yeah, yeah. And it should tell you what they should, a good, well laid out program should tell you what the goal is. Okay? Because then, so what we did was frequency, intensity, time, and type. I just showed you 1 day of stuff. So we would look then at, okay, well, this is 1 day. What's the next? What's the next week? Is there progression? Is there specificity? Right? Is there overload? Is there a plan for those things that are going to be included? So you could see, right? Here's our goal. I want my legs to get stronger, or I want to do total body strength exercises. And you figure out, is the type and the specificity going to match up with their goal?
What's like the formatting? Like, are we gonna do a paragraph for each of the like FITT, or is it like?
So the formatting, I don't care about. I'm a very practical kind of person. I have 3 classes, which means I have a lot of things that I have to grade. So if you want to make bullet points, right? Like there's a bullet point for frequency here, bullet point for intensity here. Here's what it is. Is it good? Is it bad? How would I change it? You can do it for all of them. Okay. Let me, we're not going to do the next thing. We won't start cardiovascular system, but let me just pull up the, thing. Okay. So there's going to be you have a little bit of stuff like on the grading rubric. Did you pick a proper article? Information regarding the article's adherence to fit and PROS. So like what you can do, like I said, is you can make a table and say frequency, intensity, time, type, and then progression, right? Regularity, overload, specificity, and then just sort of write something in the table like that. You can do it and put a bullet point. You can write it as a paragraph narrative and say, like, I found this article and here's what their frequency was, and write it in complete sentences, whatever makes the most sense to you. I just want the stuff where it's obvious on there, like what it is, that needs to be covered. Okay? And then make a place on this. This is the other place where people miss things up, or mess things up and miss points. Is you don't make recommendations about what you would change. Okay? You don't. Even if it's good, make it better. Okay? Even if it's good, make it better. Write out the stated goal of the program. It's like it's not. Just a lot of this is just, are you doing the things that I'm asking you to do? That's part of all of this. Okay.
When you say about the article, does that just mean it's a full body class of the paper?
No, it doesn't have to be total body. It could be, I'm just going to shred my arms. It's more just like that it's actually resistance training, and it's not running or cross training or something like that. It's actual resistance training. That happens sometimes. It didn't ever occur to me that would be a mistake, but people have done that. They'll grab something and it's not really resistance training. So that's what I meant. It's just the right kind of thing. And that's why you guys get a chance to send it to me if you found something and tell me. I can say, yep, that'll work. Nope, that one won't work.
I have a question about like when it says 2-3 days per week, is that like the same muscle group? Like
Yes.
you're doing leg day 2 or
Twice.
3 days
Yes.
a week? Or-
Yes. In an ideal world, you would lift each muscle group, whatever you're doing, 2 days per week. That's right. So if the bros are bench pressing today, they need to come back on Wednesday or Thursday or Friday, probably in bench press again. All right. If you squat today, you should probably squat again in a couple of days. So usually you want to work a muscle group, give it a couple of days of rest, and then work it again. So, yes.
Some of these workout programs are like before you even get to look at them.
Really? We're like all in the wrong business, I guess. Right? We need our own things. So, all right, Dr. Black's section 3 of 3813 class. We'll put a couple together as a class, and then we'll charge people. All right, and I'll buy y'all donuts. Every time somebody buys one, we'll bring donuts to class or something. You all get like 25 cents on your Venmo or something from it. Figure it out that way. Mom 30. Okay. Okay. That's okay.
We can have a promo code for other students.
Right? Okay. I've not ever seen any of those. I don't know what kind of rabbit hole y'all are going down to find various things on the Google machine, but so okay. All right. Well, I'm not gonna go ahead and start the cardiovascular anatomy and physiology today. We'll pick that up on Wednesday. If you guys have questions, I should be around all day tomorrow in my office or available via email or on the phone. If you've got questions, you gotta let me know. Okay? Otherwise, I'll see you Wednesday. I need your data by Wednesday. So go get that bench press done. Go do your push-ups and your sit-ups, please.
There's like 2 more songs.